All right, welcome to a midweek solo edition of Men of a Certain X as Dave enjoys the great state of Florida, the Sunshine State. He's left me alone here to talk through this midweek episode, which is Wednesday, April 16th, 2025. Going to do the usual segment type format, but I'm going to go through things a little bit faster and maybe a few more sections than usual. So I want to start out with an of course it happened type moment at the White House as JD Vance, our vice president, loathed by the country of China, was hosting with President Trump the college football champions Ohio State at the White House this week. JD Vance being an Ohio State graduate and former senator from the great state of Ohio, a part of Greater Virginia. He was attempting to pick up the college football championship trophy, and in an of course it happened moment, JD Vance completely fumbles the trophy. Trayvon, famous running back for Ohio State, is there with him, Trayvon Henderson, and he's able to help sort of keep things somewhat together. But as JD Vance picks it up, the base completely falls off, fumbles the trophy, it breaks. Just so perfect a moment for JD Vance because you feel like everything he gets his hands on, he is screwing up, to include a simple award ceremony. So just thought that was a really fantastic moment to capture the absolute buffoonery of the White House. But we're not going to get stuck there. And actually, we're going to give some positive comments to the White House to start things off today because unlike some news stations, Dave and I do try to be fair and balanced when we present here. So I want to start off with an announcement made at the end of last week by the Federal Aviation Administration, which is having its own whole host of problems these days. But to their credit, the FAA announced that during this week, going on right now and through parts of next week, they will be conducting drone detection testing in New Jersey, and they'll be flying over 100 drones around during this time. Now, not necessarily anything remarkable in announcing this, unless you look back to the complete bungling handling of drone sightings by the Biden administration last year, when people were reporting drones, maybe aliens. We had congressional hearings about it, and the administration failed to completely, clearly respond to the moment. So hats off to the FAA for saying, hey, we're doing this. You're going to see drones in the air. Basically, please don't report them as UFO sightings. We know what we're doing here, and we're telling you about it. So a good move by the FAA. Good job. Good job to announce that. Continuing with other good White House news, executive news, the White House is meeting with Iranian personnel to talk about our differences, right? After some blustering and threats from Donald Trump, which we've all come to expect and don't approve of necessarily, but we've come to get used to those. Good to see actual diplomacy taking place. I don't know if anything's going to come from it. We've been negotiating and talking with Iran on again, off again for a very long time, but good to see attempts being made to meet some countries that we sometimes struggle with and to have meaningful conversation. That's a good thing. So again, credit to the White House for taking time to meet with Iran to try and do things right. Now, beyond there, I don't know if I want to approve everything. I want to pause and talk about another executive action recently as the White House continues its malicious, angry, hateful, vengeful weaponization tactics, pursuing its perceived political enemies, from law firms to individuals. This administration is targeting individuals and going after them aggressively, harshly, cruelly, unnecessarily, and aggressively, in some cases, maybe even questionably legally. And last week, President Trump, among other individuals, came out after the former director of DHS's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, Chris Krebs, revoking his security clearance, revoking clearances for all the individuals at his company that he works in, and conducting an investigation into his career service at DHS. This is because Chris Krebs oversaw CISA, the part of the government that is responsible for elections oversight, during 2020, was famously fired by tweet by Donald Trump. And during that time, as Trump was throwing out allegations of fraud, CISA was saying, hey, these elections were free, safe, secure, reliable. There's no evidence of considerable voter fraud. The election results are legitimate. Americans should believe them. And that infuriated a lying Donald Trump who created the whole big lie nonsense and tried to deny that he lost the election. A story he continues to tell today, even though sometimes he sort of backs off a little bit. He continues to believe, or say at least publicly, that he won that election. So really gross to see this aggressive attack from the White House, not unexpected. It's exactly what we expect to see from this White House and this administration, and we've seen it with others. And that brings me to a really good article that came out earlier this week. I'm going to try and find it here. It talked about the fact that we've seen these types of tactics from the government before, many times before. And the important thing for all of us, I don't have the article in front of me, I'll try and find it as we go through this podcast today, but the important thing as we see these types of attacks from the White House, from Congress, and nonsense activities like Jim Jordan's former subcommittee on weaponization, no longer active, is when we, like law firms and tech companies, go along to get along and just sort of pay the administration, pay a fee, offer free services, blah, blah, blah. You are condoning, approving, empowering this president, and you are approving of his actions and making him even more loud and aggressive towards others. And the only acceptable answer is to say, no, I'm not going to put up with this bullshit, and to push back. And we as Americans have to push back, and we should push back. And so I'm going to jump to a segment I actually wasn't planning to get into, but let's go ahead and get into that now since we're sort of talking on the topic of pushing back. We are seeing in town halls or pseudo town halls across the country, people coming out and saying no to Congress when they get a chance. Senators, Congress people, even some that are having town halls like the esteemed Cubits that Dave and I like to talk about, aren't really having town halls because they can't handle it. And so they're having scripted, basically pep rally events to talk to their constituents, but not talk with their constituents. But where they are having conversations, where they are trying to have town halls, the American people are saying, what the hell are you doing? And that's what we need to do. Like, we need to push back on this administration because people are tired of it. People are tired of it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the ongoing immigration fiasco, but then I want to get into some recent polling because, hey, things aren't going well for the White House. Not at all. Not at all. And that's important. And that's a good story for America, that America's saying, this is crazy bullshit. We're not going to play batshit Donald Trump games. We don't approve of this. So let's start with immigration. Not going to spend a lot of time here, right? You've probably seen a lot of this. There's some great reporting of this on Blue Sky. If you follow Anna Bauer with Lawfare, she's a senior editor at Lawfare. She did a great play-by-play of yesterday's court visit where the administration was trying to defend their actions in failing to bring back the U.S. resident, the Maryland resident who is now in an El Salvador jail, that the whole White House fiasco earlier this week was about. When the president of El Salvador came and spoke with President Trump, they basically said, hey, we can't do anything here. Our hands are tied, which is complete, utter bullshit. And that's what the judge was talking about yesterday as she demands the administration follow through with what the Supreme Court has said is proper action and report on their attempts to bring back this Maryland resident who was whisked away without due process, without charges, to El Salvador, initially identified by the administration as an administrative error. Now, if you listen to the White House press secretary and her absolutely bullshit press conferences where she espouses lies in defense of the administration, and in that press conference, most recently yesterday, talking about how this is a terrorist. He is a terrorist. He is a human trafficker. Nothing to back that up. Even Fox News' Steve Doocy was asking questions, and we'll come back to that, sort of rolling his eyes at the completely unsubstantiated allegations coming out from the White House, changing their story from an administrative error to now that this individual is a terrorist actor who can't be returned. It's too dangerous. And that's what the president of El Salvador was saying, that, hey, we can't release a terrorist. That would go against what we're doing in our country to crack down on crime. Complete and utter bullshit from both mouths of the El Salvadoran president and our American president, and it's nonsense. So you can read more on this story of this U.S. resident being whisked away. I'm sure everybody listening has probably heard that already. And again, check out Anna's posts on Blue Sky to get play-by-play of the entire court hearing. But let's talk about the comments from earlier this week, okay, where President Trump basically said, in somewhat private remarks, you captured on film, hey, I want you to build 5 more facilities to handle homegrowns, homegrowns being Americans that he wants to send away to these foreign jails, these El Salvador jails, just like they have with Mr. Abrego Garcia. And just on the point of Garcia, no one is arguing, because it doesn't matter, it's not relevant, if he's a good guy or a bad guy, a good dad or a bad dad. That's not the point. The point is a resident was taken away without due process, unconstitutionally, to be put in a jail in a foreign country, and essentially, as far as White House is concerned, left for dead, not bringing him back. Okay, that's what's happening. And the president is saying, hey, like, that's great. Now we want to be able to do this for homegrowns, Americans. So let's start with Pam Bondi, the esteemed Attorney General from Florida, who was asked, again on Fox News, administration-friendly Fox News, about the president's comments that, hey, we'd like to be able to send Americans to these El Salvadoran jails. When asked about that by Jesse Waters, he basically said, what are your thoughts here, right? Is it legal for the president to do this? She wouldn't answer the question. Instead, she answers, Jesse, they're Americans, he is saying, who have committed the most heinous crimes in our country. Crime is going to decrease dramatically because he has given us a directive to make America safe again. Right now, legal experts, as referenced in various news articles, have said that it's obviously illegal to whisk away Americans to a foreign country's jail, right? For a number of grounds, perhaps starting with just its cruel and unusual punishment is the easiest one to take on, which is right of our Constitution, right? But she is saying, hey, like, we're going to reduce crime. I get the fact you want to reduce crime, but you can't do that through illegal processes and means. This is a nation of law, rule of law, not a rule of the man, not a rule of the king, and just doing it in the name of security doesn't make it okay. Doesn't make it okay. So the president doubles down, right? He has said in recent remarks, the president has come back following the White House comments, as people have asked him about this, that he is looking into deporting U.S. criminals to El Salvador as well, right? The president acknowledges this. Again, this is a president who does what he says he's going to do. Dictator on day one. I want to run for a 3rd term. I want to put Americans in foreign jails. That is crazy talk. That is crazy talk. And as Americans, we have to say no. Even if you're thinking, hey, there is bad crime and we should punish murderers and other violent criminals more aggressively. Okay, we follow the due process, we follow the law, we follow the legal rules here in these United States, and we don't whisk them away to foreign countries to be abused and lost forever. Their families can't see them, where they can't follow up on legal proceedings, on appeals. We don't do that in the United States of America. It is blatantly illegal. The challenge we have with this president is they do first and then get things caught up in the courts where they obstruct later, while Americans or residents that are legally here suffer and their families suffer. In the case of this Maryland man, right, he's there. He's in El Salvador. He's dead for all we know. We don't know, right? And he was taken away. And now the administration is obstructing and delaying their response, defying the Supreme Court. And the judge isn't having it. She's leaning into an aggressive process of discovery right now, telling the administration's lawyer, hey, cancel your vacation plans, buddy. We've got work to do because you're not doing what you've been told by the Supreme Court, a Trump-friendly court, you have to do. If the president decides to whisk away American citizens, it's going to be the same thing. Take them first, deal with the legal aspect later. That could be you, that could be me, that could be your friend, that could be your neighbor, that could be your mom, that could be your son, that could be your daughter, right? Magicked away, taken away, and then the administration will deal with the court proceedings where they will drag their feet, defy the courts, and put Americans at grave risk. That is unfucking acceptable. So on that note, the president's reckless actions are increasingly being seen as Americans as unacceptable. There's an interesting caveat to that, but let's look at a couple polls. Let's start with the recent YouGov President Trump approval poll. This is from earlier this week, let me put a date on it for you. This is from April 11th, so late last week. 41% of Americans approve of the president's actions, 54% disapprove of the president's actions. Okay, that's a YouGov poll. I'm going to look at a Quinnipiac survey, which is a little more recent, but that's a pretty big margin, right? That's a pretty big 13% difference in approval and disapproval. And again, if you're the president of the United States, you're probably, I mean, like if you get down to the 30s, like you're in crisis mode because you probably have 35% pretty much in your pocket if you've been elected to the presidency, right? You're party loyalists, you're ideological loyalists, your defenders. Like there's 35% of the population that will probably almost stand by you no matter what. Impeachment, criminal charges, whatever it is, right? From Bill Clinton to Dick Nixon, like the American people there's a portion that will stay faithful to their elected president because they see something in them, right? So when President Trump is at 41% approval, that is danger close to catastrophe for the president of the United States of America. But like, let's continue on because some interesting things that came out, with these polls. One, Americans now see the economy as wholly Donald Trump's economy. His Liberation Day, 2 weeks back from today, his Liberation Day tariff absolute fumble, akin to J.D. Vance's fumble, is a disaster. And Americans are looking at the on again, off again, ever changing, ever morphing tariffs and saying, this guy is making shit up and doesn't know what the hell he's doing. And they're saying the economy belongs to you, Donald Trump. Stop blaming Joe Biden. That's a problem because at the end of the day, Americans tend to vote based on their pocketbooks. And if prices are going up, things are more expensive, there's confusion in the market, 401ks are down, stocks are down, consumer confidence is down. If that continues into the midterms, Republicans are going to get raked over the coals at the midterm elections. And that causes a problem for the president, who presently has control of all three branches of government, right? And is still messing things up. So the economy belongs to Donald Trump, as polling shows. And this was, I think, an NBC poll, if I recall. This shows that Americans now completely give the economy to Donald Trump. A CBS YouGov poll, I apologize, CBS YouGov poll finds that Americans are giving the economy to Donald Trump. 54%. So they believe that Donald Trump's policies are more to blame than Joe Biden's. People are done with Biden. 21% blame Biden. Those are your hardcore MAGA loyalists, right? Additionally, as Americans look at it, an interesting discovery is that more Republicans are identifying as MAGA than before, right? So within the Republican Party, where there was this sort of separation of MAGA loyalists and traditional GOP supporters, increasingly, the Republican Party is becoming MAGA. 70% of GOP supporters today identify as part of the MAGA movement, up from 55% just before the election in November. That's a big increase, right? So the fact that Donald Trump's cult of personality is growing and really taking over the Republican Party, the Ronald Reagan Republican Party is dead. Like, that party does not exist, right? Like Ronald Reagan, don't like Ronald Reagan, like his policies, don't like his policies. That party that existed as the GOP is gone, right? Before the election, over half identified as MAGA. Today, almost 3/4 identify as MAGA. That is who the Republican Party is today. It is a Donald Trump-esque party, whether it's Donald Trump or somebody else leading the charge in the years ahead, right? That is where the Republican Party is today. If you like it, great for you. If you hate it, you should be concerned, because the GOP of old is dead and the Republican Party today is the MAGA party. And so it's just like, that's just where things are. And like, that's okay. And like, in a sense, like, there's nothing wrong with that, except the fact that if you believe what I believe, that's a huge threat to American democracy, right? But that's interesting sort of identification of the party. But let's look at the most recent Quinnipiac survey, and I'll share the data of this one in just a moment. But in this survey, 41% approve of Donald Trump, 53% of those who were polled disapprove. Now, what's important here really are independents, right? Along party lines, radical separation, right? 86% of Republicans approve, 9% disapprove. That 9% are the remaining 10 people that are still loyal to the old school Republican Party that are non-MAGA loyalists, right? 86% approve. On the Democrat side, those identified as Democrats, 93% disapprove, 2% approve. I don't know who those 2% are, but I mean, complete party divisions there. But among independents, 36% approve, 58% disapprove. That's a big number. That's a big number. Men, more evenly split, 49% supporting the president, 45% disapproving, 6% don't know, right? So more men than not approve versus disapprove. Interesting observation there. Among women, however, 33% approve, 61% disapprove, right? So among independents and women, Donald Trump is losing big. He's losing big because of the actions that have been observed over the last 2.5 months. So that's where the tide is turning, right? Americans are increasingly moving away from what they're seeing with Donald Trump. And when asked about do you strongly or somewhat disapprove, 51% of independents strongly disapprove, 6% somewhat. 58% of women strongly disapprove, 3% somewhat. So those that are disapproving loudly, like strongly. They are turned off by what they're seeing. And that's where we are. The economy is doing worse. People are frustrated. There's threats being made to whisk away Americans. And the American people are saying, that's enough. We do not want more of this. So that's where possible. I didn't intend to spend that long on it, but since it kind of progressed there, we went there. Let's hit a couple of other things real quickly. Just one, I want to observe how absolutely batshit crazy we are right now in this country and some of the craziest headlines. So law and crime, these are all like in the last few days stories. I didn't go back and dig these up. I just want to read some of the headlines from law and crime that were observed over the last few days. This one from April 14th. Jealous wife ran over woman spotted leaving a Circle K with her estranged husband, police say. Woman and her husband are not together. Dude's walking with another woman walking out of the Circle K. If there's another Circle K, think of your 7-Eleven gas station. She sees them together, tries to run him over with her car. That's her response. That's not a healthy response, right? Continuing, a separate story, also from April 14th, law and crime. Mom and boyfriend killed 3-year-old to make room for a child the two of them could have together. That's disgusting. This is a story coming out of Michigan, right? And the actual incident occurred years ago. But they conspired together to kill her child so they could have a child together. What the fuck is wrong with you to be that sick in the head that that's what you want to do? I can't even fathom how fucking sick that is. It's so fucking gross that they did that, right? But continuing, because there's more. A furry, right? A guy who likes to dress up as a furry, who referred to himself as a beast, was recently sentenced for killing a teen girl's parents so he could run away with her. The California man, a 33-year-old, right, was pursuing a 17-year-old girl that he became obsessed with after he met her at a furry event 9 years ago. Went on to kill her parents so they could run away together. What the fuck are you thinking? This happened, right? This happened. So interesting romantic chaos in our environment. Just one more, right? Woman teamed up with her sister to slaughter ex-boyfriend with dozens of knife wounds to torso and neck. 52 stabbings. Right? She said this took place in Oklahoma. Her ex-boyfriend was in Texas. So Ms. Brewer here and her sister conspired to attack her former lover, murder him, gross in the way they did it. 52 times they stabbed him in his neck and torso, right? And he died, right? So they were also recently going through courts, right? This is all just this week. So this is a kind of chaotic violence in our environment. Fortunately, not everybody resorts to violence. Some people still resort to just writing Dear Abby type letters. So one woman who used an anonymous name, so we don't know her full name, wrote to Slate's How to Do It advice columnist, Rich Jizwaik, I might be saying his name wrong, basically saying, hey, my husband is a peeping Tom. And so they live in an apartment, and her husband had a telescope and was supposedly stargazing. Woman comes to find that her husband has been staring into an apartment building, watching another couple having sex night after night after night. So she wrote this Dear Abby type letter saying, what do I do with my husband, who I think is a pervert? All right, that's what she refers to. She refers him under a pseudonym. And she's asking, is he like causing harm here, or is this okay? Now, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, listener, right? Because to me, if you're having sex with your window open in an apartment complex every night, you're kind of inviting people to watch, right? And like close the blinds, right? Close the blinds. This guy sees it. He sees it every night. Like, should he be watching? Like, no. That's gross. It's kind of a violation of people's privacy. But close your damn blinds, unless you want people to watch you, which some people are into, and maybe this couple is. Is there harm being done here? Like, is there actual harm being done here? This guy's essentially watching porn, right? Whether he's watching it on his computer, in a state with his VPN, because his state may not allow him to watch pornography because of some repressive, ridiculous culture war laws. So instead of watching porn online, he's watching the neighbors have sex. They're leaving their window open every day to allow him to observe them. You don't forget that your window's open every night. You know what you're doing, right? So is this woman's husband really at fault? Is it creepy? Yes. But is it criminal? Turns out being a peeping Tom isn't illegal in every state. So it varies from state to state. So he may not have actually crossed any legal boundaries in what he's doing. And I don't think it should be illegal. Close your blinds. I put the blame here on the couple. The husband might be wrong, might be kind of gross, might be creepy, but not illegal. So I guess continue on, pseudonymous husband. I had a lot more that I wanted to get into today. I want to talk about some upcoming movies. Just want to mention these, right? As Supergirl's getting ready to come out, Superman's getting ready to come out, Fantastic Four's getting ready to come out, Supergirl's a little bit later. They just wrapped up some filming. But Fantastic Four, Jurassic Park, and Superman all coming out here in July. Recently announced that they're going to make a Gremlins 3 and a Goonies 2. Now, Goonies came out in June of 1985, and I'm going to admit this, and Dave, if he listens to this, is going to be like, what? I have never seen Goonies. I know it because it was so famous. I know some of the like lines and storyline of the movie. Never saw it. But the original came out in 1985. 40 years later, we're talking about coming out with a Goonies 2. So that's out there, if you're curious. Came out around the same time as E.T., 1982. The Never-Ending Story, 1984, which I definitely saw, as well as E.T. And another 1984 classic, Gremlins. Gremlins came out in June 1984. It was followed by Gremlins 2. I have issues with Gremlins. I'll come back to that in a moment. But they're making a Gremlins 3. So something to look forward to if you're a fan. Gremlins 3, Goonies 2. Apparently also Beetlejuice 3. Beetlejuice 2 sucked, so they should stop. But those are coming out. Something to look forward to. Now, my issue with Gremlins, in that they reveal that there is no Santa. Like I already knew, because I'd already had that ruined a number of ways to include Super Fudge. But I felt like that was wrong. Like I hate it when pop culture takes the opportunity to ruin things for people in a way that like it's not their place to do it, and there would be no way to anticipate that was coming when you went to see that movie. So I always had issue with that. And when I watched that with younger family members, with cousins, like I would deliberately fast forward to that part because I thought that was so crappy. And given I think it was an R movie, so probably kids shouldn't have been watching it anyway. But nonetheless, she didn't need to be there. So that was my beef with Gremlins. And with that, I think I have to wrap up because we're out of time here. So a lot going on. Some good things being done by the administration. A lot of bad things being done by the administration. Some crazy ass things being done by Americans around the country when it comes to their challenged relationships. Peeping Toms may be legal. And some upcoming movies to check out. And of course, JD Vance is a bungling bozo who can't even handle picking up a trophy without breaking it, which we expect. With that, happy Wednesday. Good luck to you. Looking forward to having Dave back on Friday so we can get back into a normal format. Thanks for listening.